Dr. Tamara Sachs graduated with honors from the Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York City. She completed her residency in internal medicine at St. Raphael Hospital and Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. She studied naturopathy in France for 3 years. She then worked as an emergency room doctor for 4 years before starting her private practice in internal medicine 18 years ago. She has served in various medical boards, including a 3-year term with the National Coalition for Women with Heart Disease. If you want to find them, by the way, it's womenheart.org. And in fact, she's here tonight to help us get to the heart of the matter when it comes to understanding cardiovascular disease. Let's give a very enthusiastic welcome to Dr. Tamara Sachs.
It's my hope that tonight I might teach you a little something about how your body works. And with that information, that you might make better decisions about your health for both yourselves and your family. Sitting there quietly in your seats, I would imagine it's hard to realize how much movement and activity is actually going on in your bodies right now. So let me help you just for a second. Your hearts are all beating at least once a second, maybe more. And as it does so, it pushes blood through a circuitry of vessels. And these blood vessels vary in size from the diameter of a garden hose to the diameter of maybe 1/10 the size of your hair. Every minute, your entire bloodstream goes around your body 3 times, such that at the end of one day, your blood has traveled 12,000 miles. To do that, your heart pumps with such force, it's actually stronger than the leg muscle of a trained sprinter. And that pumping action happens 35 million times a year. I think that's remarkable. But then again, I find these things remarkable. That's why I love this stuff. I'm here to tell you about how your blood vessels in your heart can stay healthy and what makes them sick. And I have 3 main areas of news to tell you about. And it's all good news. The first is that everybody in this field agrees cardiovascular disease is largely preventable. It's within our control. The second is that there are new theories about what causes cardiovascular disease, and inflammation is at the root of that. And third, there are new approaches for preventing and treating heart disease that involve nutrition. Dr. Walter Willett, who's at the Harvard School of Public Health, said that a healthy diet teamed up with regular exercise and no smoking can eliminate 80% of heart disease and 70% of certain cancers. However, Margaret Mead said that it's easier to change a person's religion than to change their diet. Cardiovascular diseases, cardio, heart, vascular, blood vessels, are just that, diseases of the heart and the blood vessels. And they encompass a large range of diseases. The heart diseases that you probably know about are heart disease, also called coronary artery disease, or CAD, also called coronary heart disease, just to confuse us, CHD, same thing. And there's also heart problems such as arrhythmias and heart failure. And the blood vessel disease part of cardiovascular disease includes high blood pressure, stroke, erectile dysfunction, and about 20% of all dementias. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer in this country by far. It has been for almost 100 years. Currently, about 800,000 people die annually from cardiovascular disease, and more than half of those are from heart attacks. Of note, 50,000 more women than men die every year from heart attacks. This is an equal opportunity disease, and we are all at risk. There's an increased prevalence of cardiovascular disease going on in this country, partly from good news, which is that the death rate is down. We've gotten better at treating it. But the bad news is that more and more people are developing diseases of the heart and blood vessels, so new cases are up. In fact, right now, there are 80 million people in this country living with one or more forms of cardiovascular disease. That's 1 in 3 of us. That's way too many. When I went to medical school, I was taught that cardiovascular disease, and heart disease in particular, was kind of a plumbing problem. I was taught that it was always a progressive condition, and it was irreversible, and it had to do with cholesterol plugging up an artery gradually, until blood could no longer flow, and they had a heart attack. But current observations don't hold that theory at all. In fact, new theories have emerged as a result of current observations, and they say that cardiovascular disease is preventable. It's also reversible at times. And rather than a cholesterol plumbing problem, we now know it's an inflammatory problem. Both cardiovascular disease and heart disease, heart attacks, are diseases that involve the wall of a blood vessel, of the artery. Plaque forms inside the wall between the lining and the muscle. And plaque can sit there quietly for a long time and do you no harm. But if plaque becomes inflamed, then it can become unstable. And if it becomes unstable enough, it can rupture. And that, unlike a plumbing problem, is more like a sudden, unpredictable volcanic explosion. And when a plaque becomes so inflamed that it ruptures and explodes and touches the blood, when plaque comes into contact with blood, blood clots immediately. And it's that clot that causes a heart attack. The National Institutes of Health, in their guidelines to physicians, has stated very clearly that lifestyle changes are the most cost-effective way to reduce the risk for cardiovascular disease. More specifically, diet. The World Health Organization has said that a low intake of fruits and vegetables is responsible for 31% of all heart attacks and 11% of all strokes worldwide. 31% from a lack of fruits and vegetables. It's within our control. Philip James is the chairman of the International Obesity Task Force, and he said to eat a healthy diet in America is to behave abnormally. I thought about that for a while, and I had to admit he was right. 60% of Americans eat no fruit, none. 25% of Americans eat no vegetables, none. In fact, only 11% of us eat the recommended servings of fruits and vegetables every day. The consequences of our American diet are all too obvious. As of 2006, a full 34% of all Americans are officially obese. 64% of us are overweight. And sadder still, 17% of our children are overweight. And that is up from only 5% just 25 years ago. That's a very rapid rise. I think that's what prompted Dr. Jones, who's the president of the American Heart Association, to recently say that unless we do something and change our lifestyle and our diet and our children's lifestyle and diet, our children are going to develop cardiovascular disease younger than we did, and they're going to die from it younger than we did. It's within our control. So what is a healthy diet? If the majority of us don't eat one, would we even recognize it if we saw it? I don't know. And what's all the fuss? Why is the diet so important? Well, it's simple. A healthy diet makes you healthy. And there are many different kinds of healthy diets, but they are all primarily plant-based diets. The reason for that is simple. Cells need the nutrients that are found in plants. It's not optional. For a cell to function optimally, it must be fed correctly, and that is plant-based foods. This isn't negotiable. You can't argue with the cell and say, could you please just like French fries better than this salad here for a while? Cell physiology is not negotiable. It is what it is. The way you eat largely determines your health. We know this because we know that 70% of all diseases are from environment, lifestyle, and diet, and 30% are from genetics or heredity. That means that environment trumps genetics most of the time. And that means that your health, and my health, is in our control most of the time. The Mediterranean diet is the most famous, scientifically speaking, diet. It's been studied a great deal. It's the food that was traditionally eaten in the Mediterranean basin and still is in some places like Crete and in the south of France, where my family's from. It consists of vegetables in abundance. Historically, they were local and fresh and mostly raw, but an abundance of colorful vegetables will do for now. And fruit, but whole fruit, not so much juices with their lack of fiber and pectin. The Mediterranean diet also includes legumes such as beans and lentils, unrefined whole grains, nuts, seeds, olives, and avocados, all those good, healthy omega-3 fats. There's some eggs, there's some sheep and goat cheese. There really weren't any cows in the Mediterranean basin to speak of. And there's seafood, of course, and there's some lean meats, and there's some moderate red wine consumption or grape consumption. In the area of heart disease and diet, the Lyon Diet Heart Study is by far the most famous study. This study was so impressive and so remarkable that the researchers did it twice, just to make sure it was true. Because what they found was that when they divided up a group of men who had had a heart attack already into two groups, and one of them was told to eat a prudent heart diet, and the others were told to eat a Mediterranean-style diet, the guys that ate the Mediterranean-style diet had a 70% less mortality. They also had a 50 to 70% less second heart attacks, strokes, heart failure, non-fatal results. That had never been seen before. A 70% decrease in mortality was unheard of. So they did it again 4 years later and found the exact same results. Even more remarkable was that these changes, this 70% reduction in mortality, was obtained without any significant change in cholesterol. And that prompted Alexander Leaf, who wrote the accompanying editorial in the journal Circulation, to say that simple dietary changes in the Lyon Heart Study achieved greater reduction in the risk of death than any of the cholesterol-lowering studies to date. Dietary factors, he said, must be very important, and this study shows that they extend beyond cholesterol. What he's referring to here is that the cholesterol-lowering studies using medications were able to reduce mortality from heart attack by 36% at best. And that's a very nice result. 36% less mortality is nothing to shake a stick at, but when you compare it to 70%, it becomes intriguing, especially since the Mediterranean diet did not lower cholesterol. If we only can combine those two things, we would really get somewhere with heart disease. A second landmark study using this diet I want to tell you about is called the HALE study. In the HALE study, they looked at over 2,000 men and women in Europe who were ages 70 to 90, and they followed them for 10 years. And what they found was that the people who did not smoke and who remained physically active and who ate a Mediterranean-type diet lived longer. They lived much longer. They found a 60% less overall mortality from all cause, and that included 64% less heart attacks and 60% less cancer. What you eat and how you live affects your health, the quality of your life, and your longevity. The USDA program that used to be called 5 a day, you're all familiar with that? It's gone. Dead. Gone. It was replaced by a program called Fruits and Veggies More Matters, aptly titled, because it's true. We know that the more fruits and vegetables you eat, the healthier you are. There's no limit, there's no plateauing of that curve. It just goes on and on. The more you eat, the better you are. The USDA also changed their recommendations for how much fruits and vegetables we should eat every day. They raised it. What used to be a recommendation of 5 servings is now 7 to 9 servings. That's hard to do for some of us. Some things you can do to try to help this goal of eating more fruits and vegetables, because more matters, is to count your produce intake at the end of the day. Have your kids do this. It makes it fun, makes it a game. At dinner time, how many did you have today? And if you're missing a few, load up at dinner. Try new varieties of fruits and vegetables. Experiment. Go wild. Try new recipes. Join a local food co-op. Grow a garden. Get with a local farmer's market. We know that eating more fruits and vegetables is one of the most beneficial things you can do to reduce your risk of all chronic diseases, not just cardiovascular disease. And because this is common knowledge in the scientific community, the USDA renamed their program Fruits and Veggies More Matters. And because it's so hard to do what we know we need to do, I am grateful that there is an elegant solution to help us with this dilemma. There's a product called Juice Plus. It's made from whole foods, and it's a wonderful way to add nutrition to your diet. It is convenient. We all need convenience, right? And it's affordable. And I think it complements our diet really nicely. It complements it, makes it whole, makes it better, improves it. That's what complements means. And from my point of view, the most important thing is that it's scientifically sound. In fact, I'm only here tonight because of the science. Juice Plus has more clinical science than any other nutritional product in the world. In fact, there are 13 published peer-reviewed scientific studies using Juice Plus currently, with about a dozen more in the works. Of those, there are 5 that specifically looked at factors involving cardiovascular health, and they all showed some benefit. In fact, the research on this product is so compelling and of such high caliber, it's done at major university hospitals with leading researchers in the field, that I feel that it's a professional and ethical obligation to share this information with as many people as I can, including all my patients. For me to explain to you a little bit about why diet is so important in cardiovascular disease, I need to tell you a little bit about a small cell called the endothelial cell. The endothelial cell is the lining of every blood vessel in your body. And the health of your endothelial cells is your health. We depend on them. Endothelial cells look like little fried eggs. They're flat, they have a center. Look like fried eggs, they do. Sunny side up fried eggs. And when you look at them as a whole, they form an organ called the endothelium. And it's the largest organ in the body, and it has a huge role. Endothelial cells sit side by side so that there's no gaps between them, and they form a boundary, a one-layer thin boundary. And they line every part of your circulatory system. They line your heart, all your major arteries, the smaller ones, and they actually are a capillary. A capillary is nothing but endothelial cells. And they line the veins back to the major circulatory system all over again. So everywhere where blood exists, it touches an endothelial cell. It forms a boundary and also a connection. So when the blood gets to the cell at the capillary level, the endothelial cell changes roles. It's no longer a boundary. Now it becomes a selective filter. And it allows a cell to receive the nutrients it needs, the oxygen it needs, and it takes up the waste products. It also delivers to cells their message, their worksheet for the day. Make this hormone, make that hormone, don't do this, stay out of trouble. Healthy endothelial cells are so important because they have 4 huge major roles. The first one you all probably could guess. They regulate blood flow. They're in charge of whether your artery dilates or constricts, and hence where blood flows. And they do this all by keeping the pressure as low as it can at all times. No mean trick. But they do more than that. They're a veritable factory of pharmaceutical compounds. Endothelial cells can produce a dozen or more compounds to communicate with and interact with other cells. And so in doing so, they actually balance the entire antioxidant system in your body. They also balance the entire inflammatory system in your body. And they also balance the clotting system in your body. So can you see now why they're kind of important? Those are 4 huge systems. In fact, I think that endothelial cells rule. They rule everything. They're in charge. And you can also see now why it's not a simple plumbing problem. A simple plumbing problem would be easy. This is a little more complicated. The first step in all cardiovascular diseases is when endothelial cells go bad, when they don't function properly. And they don't function properly when they don't get the nutrients they need or the antioxidants they need, or if they're constantly being injured. And when that happens, arteries harden. You've all heard of hardening of the arteries. You get high blood pressure as a result. You can also get angina or heart attacks. You can get blood clots and strokes. When endothelial cells don't do their job, all of these things start to happen. Erectile dysfunction. And if this happens in the very small blood vessels of your brain, you can get dementia. Why do endothelial cells go bad? What makes them not function? Well, there's 5 main causes of endothelial dysfunction. The first one is high blood pressure. The second is inflammation. The third is oxidative stress or too many free radicals, same thing. Fourth is insulin resistance or too much sugar. And last is toxins. Let me mention a little bit about inflammation and oxidative stress because they hang out together and they cause trouble. Inflammation causes free radicals, and free radicals cause inflammation. They're like a couple of bad boys getting into trouble all the time. They're just causing trouble. Toxins is a big word that encompasses lots of different things, and there are as many toxins from inside our body as there are from outside. Our cell waste products are toxins if they aren't eliminated. Our bodies have byproducts of metabolism, such as homocysteine. Homocysteine is a toxic compound that is inevitably made as part of metabolism, but that should be taken up and transformed into something else rapidly. And if it's not, excess homocysteine above 8, for example, is directly toxic to endothelial cells as well as to other cells like brain cells. The last point I want to make about these 5 bad players that all cause endothelial dysfunction is that there is research to show that fruits, vegetables, berries, and grapes positively impact each one of those 5 areas. Every single one of those 5 things can be made better or mitigated by an increase in produce. And that's certainly why we see such amazing results from studies that I showed you, like the Leonhardt study or the Hale study. The power of fruits and vegetables is at a cellular level. Talk about high blood pressure for just a minute, because probably half the people in here have it. We know from many studies, like the DASH study, that a diet rich in fruits and vegetables significantly lowers blood pressure, and that's a good thing. Blood pressure hurts your endothelial cells by mechanically pounding them. It's a physical pounding with every heartbeat. And in response to being beat constantly, endothelial cells defend themselves and they thicken, just like a callus. The trouble with that is that when endothelial cells thicken, they lose their intrinsic vital capacity to open and close, to dilate and constrict, to make your blood flow where it needs to go. So it's a great defense mechanism, but it's not what you want. So please, please take care of your blood pressure. Do whatever you need to do to keep it low. Don't let high blood pressure pound the little endothelial cells. They're already flat enough. Just leave them alone. The second thing I want to talk to you about in terms of what causes endothelial dysfunction, and that's the root cause of all cardiovascular disease, is inflammation. Research has established clearly key roles for inflammation in every part of cardiovascular disease development. Dr. Peter Libby, who's the chairman of cardiovascular medicine up in Boston, wrote a wonderful article explaining this, and in it he says that the process of inflammation, the same one that causes an infected cut to become red, swollen, painful, throbbing, underlies all phases of cardiovascular disease, from the creation of plaque to its growth and its rupture. Inflammation is the normal response when a cell or a tissue rather is injured. So when you cut yourself, it's normal to have inflammation. But when the cut heals, the redness goes away. Inflammation is a defense and a wonderful mechanism for healing when it's short-term and controlled. But when it becomes chronic, it's a problem. It's a problem in many things, not just in heart disease. Inflammation is being looked at right now as one of the underlying problems in cancer, in Alzheimer's, in autoimmune diseases. Chronic inflammation is not good. When endothelial cells are chronically pounded by blood pressure, attacked by toxins, robbed of nutrients, or not given enough antioxidants, and so on, they are chronically injured and therefore chronically inflamed. And an inflamed cell tends to not do its job. It shrinks, for starters. And now there's a gap between endothelial cells where plaque can sneak through, and that's the beginning of a plaque. There have been thousands of studies looking or exploring the potential benefit for cardiovascular disease prevention of purple grapes and berries. One thing we know is that they work in synergy. The purple grapes and berries don't prevent heart disease all by themselves, but when taken as a whole, when eaten as a rainbow, it does. And there are several reasons for this. One of them is that grapes and berries have incredible antioxidant potential. But the benefits of grapes and berries goes far beyond antioxidant protection. We know that grapes and berries contain a variety of compounds, such as resveratrol, and that these compounds help the body to produce more nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is the substance that makes your blood vessels dilate. And bigger blood vessels let you have more blood flow. More blood flow is a good thing. It's especially good for athletes. If athletes have more blood flow, they have less lactic acid buildup, they can go further, they have better endurance, they have less oxidative stress, which athletes get. So berries and grapes are certainly beneficial for athletes. Whenever you have more blood flow to an organ that needs it, you have improvement. That's how Viagra works for erectile dysfunction, more blood flow. But berries and grapes go beyond that. They actually improve endothelial function, and they help repair damaged endothelial cells. They promote less clotting, always a good thing. Don't ever clot unless you've been injured. and they lower inflammation. All vegetables do. A plant-based diet lowers inflammation. But berries and grapes have a special affinity to lowering inflammation, especially in blood vessels and in heart. I think that's why Juice Plus made Vineyard Blend. Vineyard Blend is the Juice Plus product made from whole berries and Concord grapes. There are 8 berries, and they added to that mix a very small amount of a few compounds that have also been shown to